Rohan leaned his head against the cracked window of the bus, watching the barren landscape blur by. The air was thick with dust, and the rhythmic clatter of the vehicle's wheels was the only sound that accompanied him. This was not how he had imagined returning to his hometown. A month ago, he was still in the capital city, working a high-paying corporate job, staying in fancy apartments, and dining at places that would make Dharmapura feel like a distant nightmare. But life had its way of pulling the rug out from under you. A sudden layoff, debts piling up, and the slow erosion of friendships that were more transactional than real. These brought him back to where he'd started. Dharmapura, a city struggling under the weight of poverty, was both home and a place he had spent years running from. The bus jolted over a pothole, forcing him upright. He glanced at the bag by his feet. Inside was everything he had left: a few clothes, some personal belongings, and a brand new pair of leather shoes. They were meant to be a consolation gift to himself, a way to mark a fresh start. But now, they felt out of place, as if wearing them in Dharmapura would be an insult to the streets they would tread on. The bus stopped abruptly at a crowded junction. Hawkers shouted, children weaved between the lanes, and stray dogs fought over scraps of food. Rohan sighed. This was the Dharmapura he remembered: loud, chaotic, and unyielding. As he shifted to adjust his seat, one of the shoes slipped from his open bag. Before he could react, it tumbled out through the narrow window, landing somewhere on the dusty roadside. Hey! He shouted instinctively, leaning out of the window, but the bus was already moving again. A wave of frustration surged through him. What a stupid way to lose a brand new shoe. The passengers around him shook their heads in sympathy. One elderly man leaned closer and whispered, "It's a shame. That must have cost you a lot." Rohan nodded absently, running a hand through his hair. The shoe was gone. What use was the other one now? He glanced down at the lonely, polished leather shoe sitting forlornly at the bottom of his bag. Then, without thinking too much, he grabbed it and tossed it out of the window. Gasps echoed through the bus, and people turned to look at him in disbelief. The old man stared at Rohan as if he had lost his mind. Rohan shrugged, feeling strangely light for the first time in months. If someone finds both shoes, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else, at least they'll have a complete pair. The old man gave him a bemused smile, the kind that suggested he thought Rohan was a fool but a harmless one. Well, he muttered, that's one way to look at it. Rohan settled back in his seat, the corners of his lips curling into a small, almost imperceptible smile. He stared out of the window again, watching the dusty roads of Dharmapura stretch endlessly before him. For the first time in a long while, he felt as though he was beginning to let go of his job, his ambitions, and the burdens he had been carrying for too long. Ravi scurried along the street, barefoot and used to it. At 12 years old, he had learned that there were two kinds of people in Dharmapura: those who found opportunities and those who survived without them. He belonged to the second group, scraping by through odd jobs, scavenging garbage heaps, and helping shopkeepers move their goods for a few coins. Today, luck seemed to be on his side. As he sifted through a mound of discarded boxes and papers, something shiny caught his eye. He pulled out a perfectly polished leather shoe. His eyes widened. Shoes like this didn't belong in places like Dharmapura. They were the kind worn by rich men, people who had never set foot on these streets. He turned the shoe in his hands, marveling at the smooth leather, the perfect stitching. But his excitement quickly faded. What use was a single shoe? He needed both to make it worthwhile. Just as he was about to toss it back into the heap, he saw something glinting further down the road. His heart raced. Could it be? He sprinted across the street, dodging carts and bicycles, and skidded to a stop in front of a second shoe, the perfect match for the one in his hands. A grin spread across his face as he held both shoes up, examining them as if they were treasure. They were slightly too big for him, but that didn't matter. He knew someone who could use them. Ravi clutched the leather shoes tightly as he hurried through the narrow, winding alleys of Dharmapura. The shoes were precious, and he didn't want to risk losing them. His destination was a small, run-down workshop tucked between two crumbling tenements. Inside the workshop, Anil, a young boy only a few years older than Ravi, sat hunched over a cluttered workbench, stitching the sole of an old boot. Anil worked as an apprentice to a grumpy cobbler, learning everything he could about repairing shoes. "Anil," Ravi called, bursting through the door. Anil glanced up from his work, annoyed. "What is it this time?" "Ravi, I'm busy. Look." Ravi held up the pair of shoes triumphantly. The dull light from a bare bulb overhead reflected off the polished leather. Anil's eyes widened in disbelief. Where did you get those? I found them, Ravi exclaimed. They were just lying on the street. They're too big for me, but I thought you could use them. Anil took the shoes, inspecting them carefully. They were nearly new, with only a bit of dust from the road clinging to the soles. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. This was the nicest thing anyone had given him in a long time. These are really nice. Ravi, thank you. Anil's voice softened, and for a moment, the harshness he wore like armor faded. Ravi grinned. You'll look just like the rich folks who pass by in their big cars. Anil laughed, a rare sound that echoed through the tiny workshop. Maybe not, but they'll keep my feet dry when the rains come. The two boys sat together in the workshop, sharing stories of the streets and their dreams for the future. For Anil, the shoes were more than just a gift. They were a reminder that even in a place as harsh as Dharmapura, kindness could still be found. The next morning, Rohan wandered through the streets of Dharmapura. He hadn't been back for long, but the city already felt heavier than he remembered. The narrow lanes, filled with rickshaws, vendors, and stray animals, were chaotic and alive. Yet, beneath the noise, there was a sense of struggle, a weight that pressed down on the city and everyone living in it. As he walked, Rohan's gaze fell on a small workshop nestled between two dilapidated buildings. His feet carried him toward it, drawn by the sound of quiet laughter coming from inside. He peered through the open doorway and saw two boys, one stitching an old shoe and the other watching eagerly. Hello there, Rohan called, stepping inside. Anil and Ravi looked up, startled. Strangers didn't usually wander into their part of town. Hi, Anil said cautiously. Do you need a repair? Rohan smiled. No, I was just curious. This place reminds me of the old shops I used to visit as a kid. He glanced around the cluttered workshop, feeling a sense of nostalgia. Ravi's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Where are you from? I used to live here, Rohan replied. But I've been away for a while. He paused, noticing the pair of leather shoes on Anil's feet, the very shoes he had thrown out of the bus window. For a moment, Rohan considered saying something, but then he stopped himself. It didn't matter how the shoes had ended up here. What mattered was that they had found a new purpose. Anil noticed Rohan's gaze lingering on the shoes and smiled sheepishly. A friend gave them to me. They're second-hand, but they're good as new. Rohan chuckled. They look great on you. The boys relaxed. Sensing that Rohan wasn't there to judge them, they began talking about shoes, about life in Dharmapura, and about the little workshop where Anil learned his trade. Rohan listened, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. As they talked, Rohan found himself drawn into the boys' world. Anil told him about the struggles of repairing old shoes with limited materials, and Ravi spoke about the children who roamed the streets barefoot, even in the rainy season. Most of us can't afford shoes, Ravi explained. Even when we get them, they wear out so fast. An idea began to form in Rohan's mind. What if we start a project? A shoe exchange. People donate old shoes, and Anil can repair them. Then we give them to kids who need them. Anil and Ravi exchanged glances, their eyes lighting up with excitement. You mean, like a workshop that helps everyone? Anil asked. Exactly, Rohan said. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. We just collect what we can, fix them up, and give them away. But who would donate shoes? Ravi asked. Doubtful. We'll figure that out, Rohan replied. There are always people willing to help. Sometimes they just need someone to show them how. Anil's mind raced with possibilities. He had always wanted to do more than just repair shoes now. With Rohan's help, he had the chance to make a real difference. Let's do it, Anil said with determination. We can call it the second shoe. Rohan smiled. Perfect. And just like that, the workshop's humble project was born. A small idea with the potential to grow into something much bigger. As they sat together, sketching out their plans, the three of them knew that this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, Rohan, Anil, and Ravi threw themselves into setting up the second shoe project. They cleaned out Anil's workshop, arranging a small area where they could stack donated shoes. Anil gathered old tools, and Ravi scoured the streets for worn-out footwear that could be repaired. The next challenge was spreading the word. They needed people to know about the project and, most importantly, to donate shoes. Rohan decided to approach the problem the way he would have tackled a business challenge. by identifying the right people and making the message simple and appealing. One morning, the three of them made a sign from scraps of cardboard. Anil wrote in neat letters, "Old shoes equals new hope. Donate here." They hung the sign outside the workshop, hoping it would catch the attention of passers-by. But for the first few days, not a single shoe came in. Ravi's optimism began to fade. "Maybe people don't care," he muttered, sitting on the doorstep with a downcast look. "They care," Rohan said, though even he was beginning to doubt. "We just need to find the right way to reach them." An idea struck him. "What if we take it to the streets? Ravi, you're great at talking to people. Why don't we visit a few markets and ask shopkeepers to donate?" Ravi perked up at the idea. He enjoyed talking to people, especially when it came with a purpose. The next morning, Ravi and Anil walked through the bustling marketplace, weaving between stalls filled with vegetables, fabrics, and trinkets. They carried a few flyers with the same message, "Old shoes equals new hope." Ravi handed the flyers to shopkeepers, explaining the project with enthusiasm. First, many shook their heads, unwilling to part with anything, even old shoes. But then, something surprising happened. One shopkeeper, a middle-aged woman selling second-hand clothes, nodded. "I've got some old shoes in the back," she said. "They've been sitting there for months. If you can use them, take them." Ravi's eyes lit up. "Thank you, madam." The woman handed them 2 pairs of shoes, one slightly torn but still wearable, the other just dusty. Ravi and Anil beamed with excitement. Their first donation. Encouraged by the success, they visited more shops and collected a handful of shoes by the end of the day. Some were broken, others scuffed, but all of them had the potential to be repaired. When they returned to the workshop, Rohan was waiting for them. His eyes widened as they dumped the collection of shoes onto the floor. "You did it. We did it," Ravi said proudly. Anil set to work immediately, repairing the donated shoes. He polished leather, replaced soles, and stitched torn seams with the skill of a seasoned cobbler. Watching him work, Rohan realized how much talent Anil possessed. "You're really good at this," Rohan said, handing him a pair with a broken strap. Anil smiled, focused on his work. "It's what I love to do. I just never thought it could help so many people." By the end of the week, they had repaired enough shoes to fill a small shelf. The sight of the freshly repaired footwear filled them with hope. It was a small but meaningful achievement. Ravi suggested holding a small distribution event in one of Dharmapura's poorest neighborhoods. Many children there had never owned a proper pair of shoes. They packed the repaired shoes into a cart and made their way through the narrow streets, announcing the giveaway to anyone who would listen. First, only a few curious children gathered, but soon, word spread, and more kids came running. Their eyes lit up as they tried on the shoes. Some fit perfectly. Others had to make do with mismatched pairs. But no one complained. "Thank you," one little girl said, her smile so wide it seemed to light up the whole street. She wore a pair of pink sandals that Anil had carefully restored. Ravi grinned. "See? I told you it would work." As the children walked away, wearing their new shoes with pride, Rohan felt something shift inside him. For the first time in a long while, he knew he was doing something that mattered. The success of the first distribution gave the team a sense of accomplishment. But it also brought new challenges. Word spread quickly about the free shoes. And soon, more people began showing up at the workshop, some with genuine need, others hoping to take advantage. One afternoon, a man arrived, demanding shoes for his entire family. "You said this is for everyone, didn't you?" he growled. Rohan tried to explain that the project was focused on children, but the man became angry. "You're playing favorites," he muttered before storming off. Rohan sighed. "We'll need a better way to manage this." Maya, a local activist who had been watching their progress, offered advice. "You need to set clear guidelines," she said. "Decide who you want to help and stick to it. Otherwise, people will take advantage." Rohan nodded, realizing that good intentions alone weren't enough. They needed structure to ensure the project could grow sustainably. As the weeks passed, the second shoe gained momentum. More donations came in, not just from individuals but also from a few small businesses that wanted to support the cause. Maya helped them organize a community meeting to spread the word about the project. At the meeting, people shared their stories of hardship and how even a small gift, like a pair of shoes, could make a big difference. "We don't just give shoes," Rohan said during the meeting. "We give dignity." The audience nodded, some wiping away tears. "For the people of Dharmapura, who had been overlooked and forgotten. The second shoe was more than just a charity. It was a symbol of hope. Inspired by the success of the community meeting, Maya suggested organizing a festival of hope, a celebration where everyone could exchange old shoes, enjoy performances, and share food. The team loved the idea. Ravi began practicing a dance routine for the festival, while Anil worked tirelessly to repair as many shoes as possible. Rohan reached out to old friends, inviting them to attend and support the event. The festival was a joyful celebration. Children danced, music filled the air, and people swapped stories along with shoes. For one day, Dharmapura felt like a city full of possibilities. As Rohan watched Ravi perform under the makeshift stage lights, he knew that the second shoe had become something far greater than he had ever imagined. The days following the Festival of Hope were filled with optimism, but Dharmapura's unpredictable monsoon season was just beginning. One evening, as Rohan, Ravi, and Anil sat in the workshop counting new donations, dark clouds rolled in over the horizon. The first raindrops began to fall gently, but within minutes, the city was engulfed in a downpour. Water surged through the narrow streets, flooding homes and shops. The workshop, with its cracked roof, began leaking, and the stacks of shoes they had carefully collected were at risk of being ruined. "We need to move the shoes," Rohan shouted over the sound of the rain hammering the roof. Ravi and Anil sprang into action, frantically wrapping the shoes in old plastic sheets and stacking them on high shelves. Despite their efforts, many pairs got soaked. By morning, the rain subsided, leaving Dharmapura drenched and muddy. The boys stared at the workshop, exhausted but determined. "We'll repair what we can," Anil said, though his hands trembled from fatigue. Rohan placed a hand on his shoulder. "We will. And next time, we'll be prepared." The storm brought devastation to Dharmapura, but it also revealed the resilience of the community. Maya, sensing an opportunity to mobilize the neighborhood, organized volunteers to help with cleanup efforts. Rohan saw this as a chance to involve more people in the second shoe project. He and Ravi went door to door, recruiting neighbors to help repair the damaged shoes. Anil taught volunteers how to stitch and polish, turning the workshop into a bustling center of activity. The spirit of teamwork was infectious. Even people who had never considered volunteering before rolled up their sleeves to help. Shoes that had seemed ruined were given new life, just like the hope stirring in the hearts of Dharmapura's people. One afternoon, a sleek car pulled up in front of the workshop, drawing curious stares from the locals. Out stepped Vikram Mehta, a well-dressed man who introduced himself as a businessman from the capital. He had read about the second shoe in a newspaper article Rohan had written and decided to see the project for himself. "I'm impressed with what you've built," Vikram said, surveying the repaired shoes and the community volunteers hard at work. "I think there's potential here, not just for charity, but for a sustainable business." Rohan listened with interest as Vikram proposed turning the workshop into a formal business, selling repaired shoes at low prices and reinvesting the profits back into the community. "It could be more than just a local project," Vikram said. "With the right backing, this could spread to other cities." Anil and Ravi were excited, but Rohan felt a twinge of uncertainty. Would formalizing the project take away its heart? That night, Rohan lay awake, thinking about Vikram's proposal. It was tempting, a chance to grow the project and help even more people, but something about it felt off. The project had started as an act of kindness, not as a business venture. Would turning it into a commercial operation change its purpose? He shared his concerns with Maya the next day. She listened thoughtfully, then said, "You need to decide what's more important, growth or staying true to the project's original spirit. But either way, you can't let fear stop you from moving forward." Rohan knew she was right, but it wasn't an easy decision. In the end, Rohan decided to decline Vikram's offer. He explained to Vikram that the second shoe would remain a community-driven initiative. "We're not just fixing shoes," Rohan said. "We're building hope, one step at a time. I don't want to lose that." Vikram nodded, respecting Rohan's decision. "I understand," he said. "If you ever change your mind, my door is always open." Rohan smiled, feeling a sense of relief. For the first time in a long while, he felt certain that he was on the right path. The workshop continued to grow, not through big business deals, but through small, meaningful contributions from the people of Dharmapura. Ravi became a trusted leader among the street children, helping them find shoes and encouraging them to attend school. Anil honed his craft and began teaching other young apprentices. And Rohan, for the first time, felt truly at home in the city he had once tried to escape. The team organized regular shoe drives, distributing repaired shoes to children and families across Dharmapura. Each event brought smiles and gratitude, strengthening the bonds within the community. With Maya's guidance, Rohan and the team began expanding the workshop's vision. They started offering free classes on basic shoe repair, empowering people to fix their own footwear. Anil dreamed of opening a second workshop in a nearby slum, and Ravi suggested setting up mobile repair stations in other parts of the city. "We're just getting started," Anil said with a grin. Rohan nodded. The best is yet to come. One day, as Ravi walked home from the workshop, he noticed a pair of abandoned shoes lying in a muddy alley. They were worn and scuffed, but Ravi knew that with a little work, they could be repaired. Without hesitation, he picked up the shoes and brought them back to the workshop. As Anil cleaned and polished them, Ravi felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The cycle of generosity that had started with Rohan's discarded shoes was still turning, stronger than ever. When Rohan saw the shoes, he couldn't help but smile. "Looks like you've learned the most important lesson of all," he said to Ravi. "What's that?" Ravi asked. Rohan placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That even the smallest acts of kindness can change the world." Years later, the second shoe had become a beloved part of Dharmapura's community. The workshop expanded into new neighborhoods, and hundreds of people learned the art of shoe repair, passing the skill on to the next generation. Rohan, Anil, and Ravi remained at the heart of the project, watching with pride as their small idea blossomed into something far greater than they had ever imagined. And though they never sought recognition or fame, their work inspired others. People in other cities heard their story and started their own projects, proving that one act of kindness, like a pair of lost shoes, can ripple out into the world in ways no one can predict. As Rohan stood at the entrance of the workshop, watching a new group of children try on their repaired shoes, he knew that this was only the beginning, because kindness, like a good pair of shoes, is made to last.